Attention, you are about to learn one of the most surprising stories of World War II, a profound account based on rare documents and forgotten testimonies. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Now turn up the volume and dive with us into this investigation. The first radio transmission was received at 0400 hours on the morning of February 23rd, 1944. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Townsend of the 93rd Infantry Division sat in his command tent on Bougainville Island, reading the intercepted Japanese communication for the third time. The message, hastily translated by Sergeant Paul Hirsch, contained a peculiar phrase that caught the colonel's attention. "Dark soldiers advance without fear." Our men refused to fire. The 93rd Infantry Division, comprised almost entirely of African-American soldiers, had arrived in the South Pacific just 2 months prior. Segregated from white units and initially relegated to support roles, the men of the 93rd had been eager to prove themselves in combat. Now, in the dense jungles of Bougainville, an unexpected opportunity had presented itself. According to the intelligence report compiled by Captain James Wilson, dated February 22, 1944, Japanese snipers had been effectively halting the advance of American forces along the eastern ridge of the island for nearly 3 weeks. Standard infantry tactics had proven ineffective against the well-concealed enemy positions. The report noted, enemy snipers demonstrate exceptional discipline, often remaining motionless for 12 to 14 hours before taking a single shot. First Sergeant Isaac Freeman, a 32-year-old former schoolteacher from Detroit, Michigan, commanded a platoon of 43 men from Company B. In his field journal he wrote, "The men are restless. We've been training for months only to dig latrines and unload supplies. Today I overheard Captain Reynolds tell the colonel that the Japanese are superstitious about black skin, some nonsense about spirits or demons." The white officers laughed. I did not. What happened next would be documented in multiple after-action reports, but later removed from official military histories. On the evening of February 23rd, Lieutenant Colonel Townsend summoned 5 platoon leaders from the 2nd Battalion to his command post. According to Sergeant Freeman's journal, the meeting lasted just under 1 hour. No stenographer was present. No official minutes were recorded. The following morning, 168 men from the 2nd Battalion of the 93rd Infantry Division prepared for a combat mission. Their objective was to advance through a 3-mile stretch of dense jungle terrain that white units had been unable to penetrate due to heavy sniper fire. Captain Howard Reynolds, one of only 3 white officers attached to the operation, noted in his personal correspondence, "It's an experiment, nothing more. The brass wants to see if there's any truth to these reports. I told the colonel it's a waste of good men, but orders are orders." The men moved out at 0600 hours on February 24, 1944. Staff Sergeant Walter Booker led the point squad. In an interview conducted in 1964 by military historian Dr. Eleanor Westfield, Booker recalled, "We were told to advance at a steady pace. No stopping, no taking cover, no returning fire unless absolutely necessary. Just walk straight through as if we owned that jungle. The captain said the Japs might be too shocked to shoot. None of us believed it would work." By 0830, Booker's squad had advanced nearly a mile into the contested territory. No shots had been fired, no casualties reported. The radio operator, Private First Class Thomas Jenkins, maintained communication with the command post. Zone 1 clear, continuing advance. The 2nd and 3rd squads followed at 100-yard intervals, maintaining the same deliberate pace. What they didn't know was that they were being watched by dozens of Japanese snipers hidden in the dense canopy above. According to documents recovered after the war, Imperial Japanese Army Captain Takashi Yamamoto commanded approximately 60 sharpshooters in this sector. His field report, dated February 24, 1944, would later be recovered and translated. Enemy soldiers with black skin advance through our positions. Men report inability to fire. Some claim these are not men, but spirits. Requesting immediate guidance. No response to Yamamoto's request was ever found in Japanese military archives. What is known is that by 1100 hours, the entire 2nd Battalion had successfully traversed the 3-mile stretch of jungle without a single casualty. They had effectively broken through the Japanese defensive line that had halted other American units for nearly 3 weeks. In his official report, Lieutenant Colonel Townsend described the mission as an unqualified tactical success. However, his detailed account of the events, including the psychological factors that may have influenced the Japanese response, was not included in the division's monthly summary. Instead, a single paragraph mentioned a successful reconnaissance mission conducted by elements of the 2nd Battalion. No reference was made to the unusual circumstances or the complete absence of enemy resistance. Corporal Maurice Washington, a combat photographer attached to Company B, claimed to have documented the advance with his handheld camera. In 1958, during an interview with the Chicago Defender newspaper, Washington stated, "I took 26 photographs that day. Men walking upright through that jungle, passing right under Japanese positions. You could see the enemy soldiers in some of those shots, frozen in place, watching our boys pass below. When we got back to base, a white officer from Division Intelligence collected my film. I never saw those photos again." Are you keeping up so far? Help us bring this story to more people. Like the video, comment if you already knew about this case, and subscribe to the channel. Now, we return to the point where everything changed. The success of the February 24th mission led to an immediate change in tactics. According to the division's operations journal, elements of the 93rd Infantry Division conducted 17 similar advances over the next 2 weeks, all with minimal casualties. Japanese resistance on the eastern side of Bougainville Island effectively collapsed by mid-March. The significance of these operations, however, would not be recognized in any official capacity. Private First Class William Gaines, a rifleman in Sergeant Freeman's platoon, kept a detailed personal diary throughout his deployment. In an entry dated March 3, 1944, he wrote, "Something strange is happening. We walk through areas where white units were pinned down for days, and nothing happens. No shots fired. Last night I heard Lieutenant Parker tell Sarge that Division wants us to keep quiet about all this. Says it's classified now. We're just doing our job, but they act like it's some kind of secret weapon." The rapid success of American forces on Bougainville created a strategic advantage that accelerated the timeline for future operations in the Solomon Islands campaign. However, the specific contributions of the 93rd Infantry Division were consistently minimized in official reports. A memorandum from Theatre Command, dated March 28, 1944, instructed all unit commanders to maintain operational security regarding specialized infantry tactics employed on Bougainville. By April of 1944, most elements of the 93rd had been reassigned to garrison and support duties. The 2nd Battalion, which had spearheaded the successful February operations, was distributed across 3 separate islands, effectively disbanding the unit that had achieved such unusual success. Lieutenant Colonel Townsend was transferred to a staff position at Pacific Theatre headquarters. Within 6 months, all of the officers who had direct knowledge of the Bougainville operations had been reassigned. Captain Ichiro Nakamura, an intelligence officer with the Imperial Japanese Army, was captured on Guam in August of 1944. During his interrogation, he reportedly asked his American captors about the black spirits who cannot be killed. The interrogation transcript, briefly available in military archives in 1954 before being reclassified, recorded the following exchange. Interrogator: "What can you tell us about American infantry tactics on Bougainville?" Nakamura: Not tactics, magic, black soldiers who walk through bullets. Our men saw demons with American uniforms. Interrogator: your men were afraid to shoot at Negro troops? Is that what you're saying? Nakamura: not afraid, unable. Many tried. Their hands would not work. Their eyes could not focus. Some said the jungle itself protected these men. The interrogator noted that Nakamura appeared psychologically distressed and recommended further questioning on this topic be discontinued, as it was producing unreliable intelligence of no tactical value. The war in the Pacific continued. The men of the 93rd Infantry Division served with distinction in numerous campaigns, though rarely in the same capacity as they had on Bougainville. Their unusual effectiveness against Japanese snipers was never officially acknowledged or strategically leveraged again. When the war ended in August of 1945, the story of the fearless advance had already faded from operational memory. Sergeant Isaac Freeman returned to Detroit in December of 1945. Like many black veterans, he found that his service earned him little respect in post-war America. He took a job at an automobile factory and rarely spoke about his military experience. His journal, containing detailed accounts of the Bougainville operations, remained in a footlocker in his basement until his death in 1972. In 1953, military historian Captain Robert Thornton began researching tactical innovations in the Pacific Theater for the Army's Combat Studies Institute. During his review of operational records from Bougainville, he noticed significant discrepancies between unit-level after-action reports and division summaries. Several references to the 93rd Infantry Division had been heavily redacted or removed entirely. Thornton's formal request for access to the complete records was denied without explanation. Captain Howard Reynolds, one of the white officers who had accompanied the 2nd Battalion on its first fearless advance, wrote a detailed account of the operation as part of his master's thesis at Columbia University in 1956. The thesis, titled Psychological Warfare in the Pacific, Case Studies in Enemy Perception, contained a 27-page chapter on the Bougainville operations. Before publication, Reynolds was visited by 2 military officials who informed him that the material was still classified. The chapter was removed, and Reynolds abandoned his academic pursuit shortly thereafter. It wasn't until 1962 that the first public mention of the unusual tactics employed by black troops on Bougainville appeared in print. The Baltimore Afro-American newspaper published a feature article about Corporal Maurice Washington, the combat photographer who claimed to have documented the fearless advance. The article, which appeared on page 7 of the April 14th edition, included Washington's account of the operation and his claim that photographic evidence had been suppressed. 3 days after the article was published, Washington contacted the newspaper to retract his statements, claiming he had misremembered events that had occurred 18 years earlier. According to the newspaper's editor, Washington sounded nervous and reluctant during the phone call. No further articles about the Bougainville operations appeared in the publication. In 1967, during a Department of Defense review of World War II classified materials, a cache of documents related to the 93rd Infantry Division was discovered in a misfiled archive. Dr. Benjamin Harris, a civilian historian working with the review committee, spent 3 weeks examining the materials before they were resealed and transferred to a secure facility. In a memo to his supervisor, Harris wrote, "The Bougainville documents suggest a deliberate effort to suppress information about the unique effectiveness of Negro combat troops against Japanese forces. The psychological implications of these operations deserved serious study, but instead they were buried." Harris's memo was itself classified, but he had maintained personal notes about the documents he reviewed. In 1971, after retiring from government service, he began contacting surviving members of the 93rd Infantry Division. His unofficial investigation led him to Detroit, where he discovered that Sergeant Isaac Freeman had passed away just months earlier. Freeman's widow, Marion, allowed Harris to examine her husband's wartime journal. The journal provided detailed first-hand accounts of the operations that official records had largely erased. Freeman had written, "March 10th, 1944, Captain Reynolds told us today that what we're doing is now top secret. Says the brass doesn't want the Japanese to figure out it's just about skin color. But I think there's more to it. White officers from division keep watching us like we're some kind of experiment. They take notes, but don't share what they're learning. Reynolds says to just keep doing what we're doing. Keep walking like you own the place," he says. "Like nothing in this jungle can touch you." And so far, nothing has. Dr. Harris compiled his findings in a manuscript titled The Forgotten Tactic, Race and Psychological Warfare in the Pacific. He submitted it to 6 different publishers between 1973 and 1975. All rejected it. One editor's response noted, "While this material is certainly intriguing, without official documentation or photographs, it remains essentially anecdotal. Publication could potentially violate security regulations that may still be in effect. The story might have remained buried completely if not for a coincidental discovery in 1982. Lieutenant James Parker, who had served as a platoon leader in the 2nd Battalion, died of heart failure at his home in Atlanta, Georgia. While settling his estate, his daughter found a sealed envelope in his personal safe. Inside was a 5-page carbon copy of a report dated March 15th, 1944. The report, bearing Lieutenant Colonel Townsend's signature, detailed the psychological effect of Negro infantry on Japanese defensive positions. The report included statements from captured Japanese soldiers who claimed that the black American troops appeared as shadow warriors or night spirits who were impervious to harm. Townsend's analysis suggested that a combination of existing Japanese folkloric beliefs and the psychological shock of seeing black soldiers for the first time had created a powerful tactical advantage that should be systematically exploited in future operations. Parker's daughter shared the document with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which published excerpts in a Sunday feature on May 9, 1982. The article prompted a brief Pentagon statement acknowledging that specialized tactical approaches had been employed in the Pacific Theater, but asserting that any racial component to these tactics was incidental and anecdotal rather than strategically significant. By this time, most of the key figures in the Bougainville operations had passed away. Lieutenant Colonel Townsend had died in 1969 without ever publicly discussing the tactics he had authorized in February of 1944. Captain Reynolds suffered a fatal stroke in 1977. Of the 5 platoon leaders who attended the original briefing, only Lieutenant Parker had survived into the 1980s, and he had never spoken publicly about the operation before his death. The story might have ended there, relegated to a curious footnote in military history, if not for a discovery made in 1991. During the renovation of a Veterans Administration building in St. Louis, Missouri, workers found a sealed metal box hidden in a wall cavity. The box contained several rolls of undeveloped film and a handwritten note. Bougainville, February-March, 1944. M. Washington, Combat Photography Unit. The film was carefully developed by archivists from the Smithsonian Institution. 23 photographs had survived, showing clear images of black American soldiers walking in formation through dense jungle terrain. Several of the photographs captured what appeared to be Japanese soldiers visible in elevated positions, observing the Americans passing below. One particularly striking image showed a Japanese sniper clearly visible in the fork of a tree, watching as a column of black soldiers passed directly beneath his position. These photographs provided the first visual confirmation of the accounts that had circulated for nearly 50 years. They were briefly displayed as part of a Smithsonian exhibit on African Americans in World War II in 1993, but full access to the collection was restricted by the Department of Defense, which cited ongoing security review. In 2001, under the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act, historian Dr. Marcus Chen obtained access to previously classified documents related to the Bougainville campaign. The report concluded the unexpected effectiveness of Negro combat troops against Japanese forces appears to result from a complex interaction of cultural factors, including, but not limited to, Japanese unfamiliarity with individuals of African descent and existing superstitions regarding dark-skinned spirits in various Pacific Island cultures. The report went on to recommend limited strategic deployment of black units in specific operations where this psychological advantage might be leveraged. Among these was a comprehensive psychological analysis prepared by the Office of War Information in April of 1944. However, a handwritten note in the margin, initialed by a senior military official whose identity remains unclear, stated, "Political considerations outweigh tactical advantages. Recommend no implementation. Dr." Chen's subsequent research revealed that similar phenomena had been observed in other theaters where Japanese forces encountered black American troops, including engagements in New Guinea and the Philippines. In each case, reports of the unusual effectiveness of these units were downplayed or classified, and the units themselves were frequently reassigned to support roles shortly after demonstrating their unique tactical advantage. The men of the 93rd Infantry Division who participated in the fearless advance on Bougainville were never officially recognized for their contribution. No unit citations were issued. No individual commendations acknowledged the psychological warfare they had inadvertently conducted. Most returned home to face the same racial discrimination they had experienced before the war, unaware that their very presence on the battlefield had represented a powerful weapon that military leadership had chosen not to deploy. In 2012, the last known survivor of the original operation, Private First Class Thomas Jenkins, the radio operator who had maintained communication during the advance, gave an interview to a military history podcast. At 97 years old, his memory remained remarkably clear. "They told us to walk tall, shoulders back, eyes forward, like we weren't afraid of anything in that jungle, and it worked. We walked right past those snipers. They just froze. Some of the fellows said it was because the Japanese had never seen black men before. Others thought maybe there was something about the way we moved through that jungle. All I know is, it was the strangest thing I ever experienced in the war. And when we got back, they told us not to talk about it. For 50 years I didn't. Now I guess it doesn't matter anymore." Jenkins passed away in 2014, taking with him the last living memory of that February morning when 168 men from the 2nd Battalion walked fearlessly through enemy territory and inadvertently demonstrated how perception and psychology could be as powerful as any weapon in the American arsenal. The full story of the fearless advance on Bougainville remains incomplete. Military archives continue to hold documents that have not been declassified. The official history of the 93rd Infantry Division mentions their service on Bougainville, but includes no reference to their unique effectiveness or the psychological impact they had on Japanese forces. What happened on those jungle paths in February and March of 1944 exists now primarily as fragments. A photograph here, a diary entry there, scattered pieces of a narrative that was systematically dismantled almost as soon as it occurred. Perhaps the most telling document is a single page from Sergeant Isaac Freeman's journal, dated April 12, 1944, just days before his unit was reassigned away from Bougainville. "The colonel called us together today, said we'd done good work, but it was time for us to move on. Then he said something strange. He said, 'What happened here stays here. Some things the world isn't ready to understand.' I wanted to ask him what he meant, but his face told me not to. I think I know anyway. They're afraid of what we did here, not the Japs, our own people. Afraid of what it means that a bunch of black men from America could walk through this jungle like ghosts, untouchable. Afraid of the questions that raises back home. Did you enjoy this story? Your support helps us continue producing new documentaries. A like, a comment, or a share makes all the difference. See more historical cases on our channel, and if you're not already subscribed, join our community. I'll see you in the next episode.